Welcome to episode 119. Are you ready for the adventure of a lifetime? No matter your destination, the travel specialists at 3D Travel Company are there to help. Just head on over to my website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side to get your free quote today.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest is not a voice actor, but is the producer and creator of the show on Netflix called The Toys That Made Us. Stay tuned for an amazing interview with today's special guest. I hope you all enjoy. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today on the show, I am super excited to be bringing you an interview with Brian Volk-Weiss. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I am excited to be here.
Well, it's super exciting for me to have you here. You know, I actually watched your show it was about 2 weeks ago now. It was one of those things where I'd had a lot of people telling me to watch your show. It had definitely been something that had been piquing my interest as I had seen social media posts going crazy on it. And a lot of fans and friends that I have in the voiceover world were definitely telling me to watch this show. And I finally got to about 2 weeks ago and absolutely loved what I was seeing. My wife and I were watching it together, and she absolutely loved the Barbie episode because she's a huge Barbie girl, and she even had one of the Barbie dolls that had the snapping different joint places for the knees and stuff, and she's like, look, this was on the show and I have this one too, and I'm going, oh my gosh. So she absolutely loved it. And you guys presented the information in such a way that it was fun, entertaining, and exciting. Just awesome show, man.
Thank you. I've produced a lot of terrible content, so I do not take it for granted when people like something that I've been a part of. So thank you.
You're very, very welcome. And just because I haven't mentioned it yet, for those of you listening out there in audio land, this is Brian Volk-Weiss, the man who created, the program creator for The Toys That Made Us on Netflix. A fantastic show, guys. Got to check it out. 4 episodes are already out. 4 more coming on May 25th, so don't forget the date. And Brian, the very first thing we really like to do when we have a guest on the show, especially for the very first time, is to get to know them. So tell me about young Brian, the boy that grew into the man he is today, and the toy collector and enthusiast he is as well.
I was born in Queens, New York, in 1976, and I was an only child, and I think a large part of why toys have always been so important to me is because I was an only child. And when you're an only child, even if you have a lot of friends in school and whatnot, there's still a lot of time by yourself, or you're in the car driving somewhere, or you're staying at a hotel on a terrible road trip to Yosemite. So I think largely as an only child, I really, for lack of a better word, bonded with my toys, maybe than other people might have. And I basically just never stopped collecting, and I also loved movies and TV like anybody. And, my favorite movie, the movie that changed the course of my career, was Star Wars. And, as we said in the episode, toys, it was the closest way to get connected to the movie, was to have your X-Wing fighter that you could play with in your hands, and you could put your Luke figure in it.
Yeah.
So the difference between me and many other people is that not only did I never stop collecting toys, not only did I start when I had a little bit of money buying the toys that I couldn't afford or my parents couldn't afford when we were little, I also happened to be in the TV business. So I was able, because of the relationships that I have, to convince, at the end, Netflix, thank God, to buy the show and then go make the show for them.
That's amazing, dude. Well, I mean, Netflix is such an innovator, and I'm loving what they're producing. No matter what it is, they've just been really hitting some gold mines lately. And I think The Toys That Made Us is one of those little golden nuggets of their gold mine that they have struck with. And I hope to continue to see this grow long into the future.
I am biased, but I agree with you.
Well, I have some show ideas for you, but we'll get to that later on. But, so
ready.
where did your inspiration for the toys that made us come from? Besides your absolute love for toys, what made you come up with this idea to even create a show about the toys that made us?
Well, I'm a huge history buff. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting was that, like, you could go to a bookstore and you could find 6 books about the War of 1812.
Yeah.
But, like, there were no real books about where did Transformers come from? Where did G.I. Joe come from? There are a bunch of books about Barbie and Star Wars toys, but there was just a real, to this day even, there's just a real lack of digging into the background of these billion-dollar franchises. And, I would say Optimus Prime is probably more well-known at this point, for better or worse, than maybe even Teddy Roosevelt, who's, on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
So that was really the origin point, which was like, I just cannot believe that no one is, like, I cannot believe that I can truthfully say to you, like, I made the first professionally funded documentary about Transformers.
That's
I find
crazy.
that very strange. Yeah.
That's crazy cool, man.
Like, people said that to me, and I'm like, I guess I should be honored, but I just also think that's very weird that, it didn't happen until 2018. So that was really the main origin. And, I always like to tell people, from the day I developed the show until the day Netflix bought it was just under 7 years.
Good
so,
Lord.
I mean, it took a long time to sell.
Well, that's crazy, man. Well, I'm glad it finally got purchased, and Netflix is definitely I think a great marketplace for you to be in because of their bingeability, watchability platform. It makes it really great. I know I mentioned you do have 4 more episodes coming out here on May 25th, 2018. What episodes can we look forward to seeing, Brian?
It's Transformers, Lego, Hello Kitty, and Star Trek.
Awesome. And for those who haven't already seen your show, what are the first 4 episodes that you guys have already produced and are already available for viewing?
Star Wars, Barbie, He-Man, and G.I. Joe.
Which are great. I mean, those toys are all like rudimentary fundamentals for most kids, especially from the, 70s, 80s, 90s. So, and probably back into the 60s some too. I know from how far back some of the toys went, it was a crazy awesome show because I really am a history buff too, Brian. And, I love history. I love toys. I love animation and voiceover. And although toys aren't really voiceover, there is a lot of association with voiceover in toys. I've got a friend named Richard Sellers, who is the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Star Wars, the Clone Wars toys.
Wow.
And he's Optimus,
Wow.
He's Optimus Prime. He was Fortress Maximus, for all the Hasbro toys. He's done several different Transformers besides those 2. So, it's really cool because the toys that made us has such a unique perspective. And in some ways I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits in the way that we're wanting to, share our stories with the world, because voiceover is a huge part of a lot of the different toys. Like even, I had Chris Anthony Lansdowne on the show, and she was the voice of Barbie for the 80s and 90s. I think she might have been cast in 94, I think is when it was. It was when the big earthquake happened in LA, and she got cast by Hasbro, and she was doing, it was Mattel. I'm sorry. I said that totally wrong. She was cast by Mattel, not Hasbro. And she did the voice for tons of stuff, everything from the McDonald's Happy Meal toys that talk to the spinning dancing Barbie to you name it. She was the voice of the Barbie products and stuff. So it's really unique to watch your show and to have talked to some of the actors who do some of the toys that you're talking about. And I'm like, wow, it just makes it more full circle for me. It's really epic.
You're very kind to say, man. I really appreciate that. I agree.
Well, it's an amazing show, man. I'm super excited to be talking with you today, Brian, and I'm so glad we're getting to share your passion with the world and with my audience, because it is a worldwide audience, so I'm super excited to share it with them.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. So what are some of the toys that really made you who you are today, Brian? What were some of your absolute favorite toys?
Well, the main one, like I said before, is definitely Star Wars. It was the movie that changed my life. It was the toys that, I mean, just absolutely inspired me to do what I do for a living now. So it was without a doubt that. And then, I was also very much into G.I. Joe growing up and Transformers in a very big way. So, yeah. I mean, that was huge for me. Interestingly enough, because many people consider this to be our best episode, I was not into He-Man. So I actually bought my first He-Man figure probably about 6-7 months ago. So it's just very. I've become a huge fan since.
Yeah.
But I was never a big He-Man guy growing up.
With certain toys, it's like sometimes, like I know as a kid growing up, I might not have really known about them, or just it was never in my realm or whatever, whether it was the year it came out and how old I was or whatever. But as I've gotten older, I've collected things that weren't necessarily something I knew of as a kid, but they might have been out when I was a kid, and I find them and I fall in love with them and I collect them. So it's really cool to share that with a fellow toy collector. My collection is, I'm sure very small compared to yours. But one of my favorite things is collecting Batmobiles, especially from the Michael Keaton Batman.
Whole shelf of Batman.
That's awesome. And, that's epic.
The most beautiful shape I find in fiction is a specific Enterprise, but a close second place is the '89 Batmobile.
Oh yeah, dude. Super epic. Well, so when you were watching, did you watch a lot of cartoons as a kid, or did you read the comics of some of the shows that were inspired before or after the toys came out?
The comic books religiously. I had every single G.I. Joe and Transformers comic book that was made from the day they came out until probably 1998.
Wow.
Which is when I graduated from college and basically stopped buying comic books.
Wow.
So yes, every single one. As it relates to the cartoon, my mom was pretty tough about TV watching. So I definitely saw Transformers and G.I. Joe a lot, but maybe not as much as other people.
Okay, I got you. Well, some parents were more strict, especially back in the 80s and 90s and 70s, sometimes just depending on the content and, go outside, play, have yourself a good time outside or whatever,
Exactly.
Versus staying in and, burning out your eyeballs,
My kids watch more TV in a week than I probably used to watch in 3 months. I mean, it is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, our world has just changed and content just comes at us so quickly and so fast nowadays. But
yeah.
and that's one thing I love about your show is the pacing is really good. They are 45, 50-minute long episodes roughly, but they flow so well and they do not drag. They very much have a very upbeat pace. You're always switching to new things, and there's reenactments and there's all kinds of cool behind the scenes stories that no one's ever told me, I've never heard before, so you've dug up all this history that, has never been necessarily really put out there before, especially in the format that you're doing it. And it's just very fascinating because, you're learning about a toy that you already care about and learning about the history of it and how it came to be and how they might have gone away for a while, but come back, and just all kinds of unique things that y'all have dove into that just make it super fantastic. Like when they were talking about certain characters, I think from Star Wars, where they were taking other toys from different toy lines and slapping putty on them and carving them up to make stormtroopers or something. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. That's crazy. But it's ingenious, especially when toys were manufactured much differently, 30, 40, 50 years ago than they are today, where they probably just have a conveyor belt that slaps them together in 2 seconds, but it's just fantastic to learn those kind of things. It's crazy wild,
Agreed.
So would you say, Brian, when you were a fan of a toy, would you say that the comics and the cartoons that you did watch inspired you to be more of a toy collector, or did the toys inspire you more to read the comics and watch the cartoons?
The comic books, more than the cartoon. I mean, the cartoons, man, like, I'm very fond of them, and they're really special in my mind, and they were just pure joy watching as a kid. But dude, they're hard to watch now, man. Like Transformers holds up pretty well.
Yeah.
But G.I. Joe is really silly. Like really silly.
Yeah.
The comics though, the comics were really well done, really smart, and hold up. I just read the first 4 Transformer issues a couple months ago for probably the first time in 30 years, and they hold up. It's a great story, and the same is true for G.I. Joe. So the comic books are really, and this is, since you've seen the show, they really they made the toys what they were.
Yeah.
In terms of the backstory. So it wasn't just a lump of plastic with metal. It was Optimus Prime, who a lot of people said this, and I felt the same way. It was kind of a father figure.
Yeah.
But it was, it was a piece of plastic. It was a stupid truck. But it was the comic book, for me, that made him the character that I saw him as.
Yeah. Make him come to life and feel more realistic to you.
Exactly.
That's fantastic, man. And that's the same kind of way I feel about, voiceover and toys as a whole too, is, the more you get to know the people behind it and the story and the history behind it, you just feel that much more attached to it. And so the next time you read that comic or you watch that cartoon or you play with that toy, it just has so much more meaning to you than it ever did in the past.
Totally. Yeah. 100%.
That's awesome. Well, I have some future show ideas for you. I don't know if you guys have some other things in the works, and I'm sure you do, as you guys are always probably plotting and thinking about what you can do next. But, I was thinking some of the original Mighty Morphin Power Ranger toys from the original 90 series release of toys would be a cool episode, especially Batman with the Batmobiles. Maybe you could do a whole episode probably just on Batmobiles alone. But, Batman and Batman toys, how they've evolved over the time. And maybe even like an episode that's kind of a mixed match of unique toys like Turbo Man that came out of the Jingle All the Way movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Sure.
So
Sure. Sure.
Just some cool kind of crazy ideas like that. But I actually own a Turbo Man, and I'm super proud of that because I got one back when it originally came out, and that's one of my pride and joys right there, man. I absolutely love my Turbo Man.
That movie is so hard to watch. It's actually fun. I mean, it's just an amazing movie because so many people who did so many great films before and after that movie, literally just everything went wrong. I mean, it was just mind-blowing to me, that film, how Schwarzenegger, I mean, didn't make a single mistake for 20 years. Then made that lovely thing. So that's cool, dude. I love that you have that. That's an awesome toy.
Well, it's more the toy than anything, but, it does make it kind of cool when it feels like you own a piece of the movie, because, kind of like with Star Wars, owning my action figures, my stormtroopers and those kind of things, it does bring a realism to it because like you said in your episodes on Netflix, when you physically could hold the toy, when you could touch it and make it tangible, it makes it real and takes you to a whole nother level than just seeing a movie and thinking, oh, that was cool, so.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, I have one final question for you today, Brian, and we will wrap this interview up. And the question is...
Fire away.
You ready? All right, man, let's do this. All right, the question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
It's funny. I don't know if I've been asked that before. It's very important to me. I think the ultimate thing that a human being can do is raise children that hopefully make the world a better place. At the very least, don't make it worse.
Yeah.
So it's very important to me that I have 3 children, and it's very important to me that they become good leaders and productive members of our society. So that's the first legacy I want to leave behind. The second legacy is, that my wife views me as a great husband, and pretty sure when I go first, she looks back and says, you know what, he was a good husband.
Yeah.
The third is, without a doubt, to have made things that touch people that can be viewed after I'm long gone.
Yeah.
So, that's, I think, a big part of, why I'm in show business. It's the greatest thing about being in show business is, you get to work on things that if the stars line up, connect with millions and millions of people. The sad thing or the interesting thing is, there could be, there was an airplane last week or 2 weeks ago. The engine exploded, and horrible story about the woman who was killed. And don't get me wrong, horrible story. But do you understand the engineers involved with building a machine that can lose half its power at 500 miles an hour, at 40,000 feet, and it doesn't just lose its power, the thing explodes. And that machine is still able to land successfully?
Yeah.
So I always find it interesting how many engineers help build that engine and build that plane that no one will ever know. But I chose a career where, I made a good episode about He-Man, and, I get emails every day telling me how great it is. So that's something I feel very privileged to be in this business in general.
Yeah.
And that's just what I hope to leave behind, is that people are laughing or emotionally touched somehow by stuff that I've helped produce.
I love it, Brian. I think that's a fantastic legacy, and in all three aspects: your family, your children, your wife, and your career. I think you're extremely dead on when it comes to, like all the engineers that have built all these safety features and stuff. No one will ever know their names, but whatever they designed could have saved those lives on that plane, and did, unfortunately, minus the one lady who was sadly who lost her life. But like you said, you're in an avenue where people do know who you are and do get to see your work, and hopefully it will be something that people are watching 1,000 years in the future going, wow, now I know the history of this. Who is the guy that created this? I see. His name is Brian Volk-Weiss. Awesome.
That's the hope. Hopefully that I've made a couple things didn't turn out too good, so hopefully that stuff isn't watched too much, and the stuff we're talking about is. That's my hope. That's my goal.
You have to make a few broken eggs to get an omelet.
I made a lot of broken eggs, but you're very kind, and like I said, I appreciate your support of the show very much.
Absolutely, Brian. Well, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today, Brian. Would you please give us a closeout as we wrap up our episode?
Yes, this is Brian Volk-Weiss, and I've had a really good time being on Who Did That Voice, and I really appreciate you supporting the toys that made us.
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Brian Volk-Weiss, the producer and creator behind Netflix's The Toys That Made Us. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. A question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the Episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time for our special guest, Jim Hanks, the voice of Woody from Toy Story, and Jeffrey the Giraffe from Toys R Us. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they've voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.